Payal Kadakia is the founder and executive chairman of ClassPass, a monthly membership program that provides people of all fitness levels access to the best boutique fitness classes and gyms across the U.S. and internationally. Since its launch in 2013, ClassPass has facilitated over 40 million reservations across 8,500 studios in 39 cities globally. Payal is also the founder and artistic director of the Sa Dance Company, founded in 2009 with the mission to increase awareness of Indian dance in the mainstream and serve as a platform for expressing the Indian American identity through movement. Payal previously worked as a consultant at Bain & Company and holds a degree in operations research from MIT. Please welcome the founder of ClassPass, Payal Kadakia.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks. You might be starting with the shortest guest on 411 and ending with the tallest.
Oh, that's true.
Bryant.
Yeah, that's the way that's the way we schedule everybody.
Got it. High order.
It's so good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Is this your first time at SC?
Yeah, this is my first time here.
Well, welcome. We'll show you around. It's good to have you. There you go.
Great.
There you go. And recently moved here. How recently did you move here and where do you live in?
It's always, where I live is like always a moving target. I would say I feel like I really live in LA as of September of last year. So I'm about 4 months in.
Good, good. What part of town did you settle in?
West Hollywood.
Okay, good. That's great. Well, it's great to have you here. These are students that are freshmen to seniors, so 18 to 22 years old. A couple grad students snuck in here as well. So that's your audience. So I think like talking about your life and decision points and why you did things and why you turned things down is just really interesting to them. So before we dive into your background, and we're going to start sort of at the beginning of your life, just give us an overview of where ClassPass stands today. I gave some statistics, but just sort of say what you do and where it is.
Yeah, so ClassPass, it's a monthly fitness membership program that lets you take classes at different studios and gyms. Any members in the audience?
All right.
Prior members, great, that's wonderful. And we're now in 49 cities globally. We've facilitated over 40 million reservations, which is a really important metric, and I will, as I always dissect the journey of the company, that is the heartbeat, because that to me is the hours of people's lives that we've touched, and that was always the mission of the company. We've raised $170 million in capital at this point, and we're just valued at close to $500 million.
Small little company, $500 million.
It took me 7 years to get here too, I will also say that, so.
That is important. Like, you're going to meet a lot of people who are on their way to success, super successful, and don't be fooled that any of this happens quickly or easily. It is absolutely a push. All right, so let's talk about your family and your background.
Right.
Where'd you grow up? How big of a family?
Yep, so I grew up in a small town in New Jersey. My parents immigrated here in the 70s from India. They came here with close to nothing. They both are chemists. So very much in the science and math space. That was sort of like my upbringing. And I have an older sister.
You do. And so your parents were chemists. Can you talk about the influence of your parents, especially your mother and her role in the family?
Yeah. One of the things that's really, and honestly, I think in hindsight with everything going on in the world today, with all like the women's, empowerment issues and all of that that's going on, I think one of the things I always look up to is my mom, because she was the person who probably convinced my dad to come to America and made sure everything that they did was sort of moving their life forward. And when I look around and I think about any females, like I just think about my mom. And I grew up in an environment where my mom's voice and my sister's voice, to be honest, were seriously the dominant ones in the family, that anytime I go anywhere, I just am like, I don't understand why any female wouldn't be taken equally. And that's obviously an issue and something that we all need to work on. But it was actually really nice for me that I never walked into a room thinking that, because of my upbringing.
When we get to raising money and sort of that experience, I want to see if there was any conflict between sort of what you felt and learned growing up and sort of the reality of Silicon Valley. Talk about your childhood. What was your passion throughout your childhood?
Yep. So My childhood, I grew up in a town that actually didn't have any Indian people. Okay, so I think this was actually an important thing and a part of my journey. So I was very different. And one of the things that was very important to me was my culture and my heritage. And I thankfully found my passion in Indian dance because my mom's best friend she was my teacher, and she started teaching me Indian classical and folk dance in my basement. And I had a group of girls, it was 10 of us, who literally we danced together from when we were 3 years old till we all graduated. And this was a community of Indian girls I had on the side. But in my hometown, I actually got made fun of for being Indian. And it actually became a really important adversity moment for me in my life because I had to learn to actually share my culture and who I was with other people. And I say that because I think that's why the passion for me with Indian dance became so important. It was about sharing something and helping to sort of change the dialogue of how people thought about Indian people and Indian culture. And I found a way to express myself and who I was because I didn't know where I belonged at that time because I felt so conflicted through dance. And I will say, I always think of dance as my first job. When I was 5 years old, I was that girl who performed at every wedding or every event we went to. And I think of my parents and my dance teacher sort of as like my first team. They were like, Payal's dancing at this thing. Let's make sure her music's ready. Let's make sure, she's rehearsed. Let's make sure she has her costume. And I had to sort of go into every event since I was 5 years old being like, hey, DJ, here's the music. Okay, I'm going to wait until I perform. And this was like a family party, right? And so I kind of developed a little bit of those skills of like managing myself in a way since I was 5 years old.
It's so interesting, the I won't say the dichotomy, but how you blended sort of, parents are probably serious about science and math.
Totally.
and the arts, and it's become such a part of what you are and what the life you've been sort of creating, and I guess you go on to pursue the sciences at MIT, and what was your experience at MIT, and how did you balance and did you include dance in your MIT experience?
Yeah, I think the motto of my life has been always fight to keep dance in my life. And to be honest, that's actually the core of what ClassPass is. It's my way of fighting for everyone to have their passion in their life. And I had to make sure it was in my life. So right when I got to school, and it was interesting, the arts and culture were obviously a very big part of my upbringing. It's a part of my culture. When I got to school, obviously studying was the most important thing. And I actually always developed this self-discipline, honestly, since I was younger, which was as long as I got good grades, I could dance. And I did that to myself. My parents didn't even put that into me. There were times where my mom was like, can you go shopping? Please stop working and doing everything that you're doing. Because I just was so, in a way, I wanted to work hard and get good grades and discipline myself so I could go and enjoy my life. And it was almost like this I kind of built that methodology in my own head. And so I ended up building a dance troupe at MIT at the time, which still exists on campus, and it was the first Indian fusion dance troupe that existed. So I started that my sophomore year in college, and my freshman year I was I probably danced at I actually went and danced at BU because I had to find a way to dance. So I just always was that person seeking out opportunities, and I think that's a part of the entrepreneurial hustle. You just, when it doesn't exist, you build it.
So interesting because at a university, as a student, it's so difficult to build something that endures because students graduate and someone's not as excited about it. So to have it still there after 10 years, it shows that it really is taken and people sort of take it each year and pass it on. Congratulations.
Thanks.
It's not easy to do. All right, so you graduate from MIT, and what are your choices and what are you thinking about as these guys are at this inflection point of your life of what I'm going to do next?
So to be honest, I had no idea. I think it's one of those things where there was no part of me that studied one entrepreneurial class at MIT. So it's interesting when I think about entrepreneurship because I think I was always an entrepreneur, but I was an entrepreneur through sort of my passion and my arts. I wasn't necessarily an entrepreneur by the book of things where I was studying entrepreneurial classes. And I didn't know. I think it was important for me to keep dance in my life, and it was important for me to sort of make my parents proud at the time. And so I got a good job. I had a great job at Bain. I still, till this day, it's an amazing consulting firm. I felt like I got my mini MBA in those 3 years that I was there. But honestly, like I looked forward to the week being over so I could go to dance rehearsal. And that sort of became like the theme and motto of my life at the time.
So, you know, it's this blue chip firm. Everybody, if you don't know Bain, it's, you know, Bain, McKinsey, BCG are all these, you know, great firms, great experience, smart people. Sometimes, and I'm not putting this on you, but I know several people from Bain that just like, it wasn't as fun behind the name as it was at getting the job. So sometimes you just have to balance, like, be careful what you wish for, because those big companies aren't always, you know, the best.
Any job that gives you a lot of perks, like there is a reason for it, right? Because like you have to work hard. And to be honest, I am so glad I got the discipline out of school. Like I think about what I want to do and what I do now and the way I have to interact with executives. And I am so glad I learned a lot of that at Bain. And because you have to know how the world works.
Sure.
And that's what it taught me. It taught me how companies go slow and how, you know, companies go fast. And it taught me how to think through business strategy, which obviously helped, you know, ClassPass grow and sort of tackle the different business problems we had. But at the same time, I think what's so important, and, you know, I always tell people to do this, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, is just think about, you know, are you happy? And I know that's an interesting, if no one ever asks you that, they're like, are you successful? Like, or how much are you making? Like, they kind of, the metrics that people judge us by are not necessarily the metrics that really are the things that make us happy. And at some point, you know, I think it's always interesting because I'm sure when we're in college, like everyone does activities and your lives are full of so many things and you're taught to learn and discover. And then that sort of stops after college. So you're just taught to get a job, get married, have like kids. It sort of like becomes that you know, balance of when do those things happen. And there's so much more to life than that. And you have to create that rest of that story. And no one tells you that. Like no one is going to tell you there are other things to achieve in your life aside those things, because that's sort of the standard path. But you have to create your own story.
It's just a great way, a segue. You know, one of our assignments is on success and failure and your metrics and how you stay on track. And so it's a perfect sort of jumping off point. And I don't want to give the wrong impression about, you know, great firms and great jobs. I worked at a large law firm, Latham & Watkins, and to this day, it's like the defining experience. It just learning under smart people and learning how to do deals and structure transactions and negotiate, all while they pay you a bunch of money.
Absolutely.
But they expect you to work insane hours, and you do because you're young. And also having that type of experience, and not everybody's cut out for it, and everybody's going to. These are competitive jobs. But I imagine, you know, when later on, you know, you're taken seriously forever when you worked at Bain or you worked at McKinsey or, you know, you go to MIT.
Absolutely.
You have it on your resume and it helps you in everything else you do.
You know, and even just the network it opens up for you. I mean, there are actually, Warby Parker, Birchbox, Pencils of Promise. I can go through a list of 10 startups that were people who are my closest friends at Bain during the years I was there. And everyone just went on to create startups. And now we all have each other as friends and colleagues to talk about, you know, we're like, what do we do when X happens? And
you work with Adam Braun?
Yeah, I know Adam. Adam was the year underneath me at Bain.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. He came a couple years ago and just, just what a powerful story. And then his brother came last year.
Yeah.
So it's the Braun family. So so you're working at Bain. How long did you work there?
I was there for 3 years.
And so I don't want to put the years together, but so at what point do you start a dance troupe in New York?
Yeah, so when I first got to New York, first thing I did was look up where I was going to dance, and I luckily found a local dance company that I was dancing with. I would invite my entire office to my dance shows, and there was one day I definitely snuck out of work and tried out for So You Think You Can Dance. You know, but that's when you know you care about something so deeply. And I think in my third year at Bain, when most of my friends were applying to business school, they had taken, studying their GMATs, and I was like, I'm rehearsing for a show. You know, I just started feeling really different. I just was like, this is not what I want to do next. There's no part of me that wants to go study right now or, go back into school. So I had to figure out for me what the right next step was. And the dance troupe idea and the dance company idea was something that actually was brewing inside of me because I felt like there was no platform for Indian dance that was constructed in the way I wanted to. So I was performing, but I was performing like at that time, a lot of people had started hearing about like Indian dance and stuff because of Slumdog Millionaire, which was great. But so we started getting a lot of commercial opportunities, but it didn't feel like a platform. Like my dream has always been, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with like the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, but my goal was, how do I create something like that for Indian dance? So that was the initial inception of my dance company. It was really with that of a North Star, but for Indian culture. And so I got a job, I actually got a job in the music industry. So I started working at Warner Music Group because, once again, I think I was taking risks, but I wasn't ready to rip an entire Band-Aid, because I also think it's important to make sure, you're in a place in your life where you can take that risk without feeling like you can't solve that problem that you're trying to 100%. And I definitely wasn't there financially yet. So I wanted to make sure I had some income while I was pursuing something. And I also didn't know if dance was going to be the thing I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And to be honest, like till this day I dance, but I'm really glad that it's not how I have to make money, because I would have probably started hating it at some point. So I figured out a way to get like sort of a more easier job, which was sort of like 9 to 6. And then I danced every night, probably from 7 to 11 p.m. with a group of girls. We performed around the nation every weekend. And that was sort of my first like 3 years at the other job. And what was so cool about that experience for me is I didn't even have like the company incorporated. I didn't, like, all these girls were like execs at like other companies, but they just had this deep passion for Indian dance like I did. And I would just like rehearse, this to me, once again, it's like all about figuring out how to get your entrepreneurial hustle going. We ended up on the cover of the art section of the New York Times. And this was 9 months into me creating this dance company. And everyone I remember in New York, they were like, how did you manage? Oh, you guys have it. That's
what a great headline.
I'm like, I haven't seen that in a while. This day like changed my life, because once again, I was probably a year and a half into creating the dance company. And the other part of it, so my dad at this time, he was very much adamant on me going back to school and did not like me dancing. He just was like, what are you gonna do with dance for the rest of your life? And I remember this day because I actually did start studying for the GMATs. I finally, like a year and a half in, decided I would study, but I threw them away on this day. Because to me, it was a sign from the world. I stayed up all night. It was because it came out on a Sunday. I stayed up all night on Saturday. Like when it came out to the stands at like 4 in the morning, I was there to pick it up. And I just felt like it was a sign from the world to be like, Payal, you have to do something bigger with your life. And this was 2 years before I even quit my job to start the startup. So this sort of happened a little bit earlier on that journey. And I just felt like it was a sign of, Payal, like you have to go for it. And then I wrote a check for $30,000 at the Alvin Ailey Citigroup Theater. And I rented it out. And I put on 3 shows back to back. And they all sold out. And I broke even, probably made a little bit of money off of it. And it was great. Like that to me, by the way, I had a full-time job through this whole thing. So that to me was like, taught me really the ingredients of how to like get things done.
So this is sort of a pivotal time in your life. When this comes out, you said you throw your GMAT review books away. And how does your father pivot in his opinion of whether you pursue dance or not?
So it was so, I loved it. Like he came to one of our shows and everyone gave us a standing ovation, and my dad calls me the next day and he goes, I looked up arts programs at Columbia. And it was very sweet because, my dad was like, I really want you to get another degree. Because that, in his mind, degrees were everything. But he was like, I looked up arts programs. So it was very sweet that he understood, at least he started understanding my passion.
That's great. So in 2010, you go to San Francisco and you visit some friends and they're building companies. How did that inspire you, and sort of what did you decide and move on after that?
Yep, so about a year after this like big show I was telling you guys about, I started actually feeling a massive conflict in my life, because I had this job that I felt like I wasn't really excited about, nor was I putting a lot of effort into. And then I also didn't know what I was going to do with the dance company. Like to me, after putting on a show like that, I'm like, do I do a tour? Like what's next? But that wasn't exactly the right thing for me to do at that time in my life either. And so I knew I needed some like creative inspiration. I went out to San Francisco, and this was roughly about 8 years ago. And New York City actually at the time didn't have many entrepreneurs. And I actually, being in LA right now, LA reminds me of like what New York was about 4 or 5 years ago. Like there was this energy of all these startups sort of emerging, And that was sort of this beautiful time. But 8 years ago, I mean, I knew maybe 2 entrepreneurs in New York City. Everyone was in finance or consulting that I knew. And so I didn't have anyone to talk to or get inspired by. So luckily enough, I was in San Francisco. I met a lot of people who full-time were building apps and gadgets and tech. And I thought to myself, you know, I have a creative side to me, and I also know I can get things done and manage stuff. So I gave myself 2 weeks to think of an idea. Like literally in my head, I was like, that's it. Like, Payal, what if you could put all your time right now and all your thoughts into coming up with an idea? And I remember like going everywhere I was like, what if I can make an idea from that or this? You know, but it's good. It's important to open up your mind to be able to think of creative ideas and think out of the box. And luckily enough, like a day and a half later, I was searching for a ballet class online, and I was miserably frustrated. I was on like 14 different websites. I was like, why am I on Yelp and on Google? And then I didn't know what time the class was, and I didn't know what the level was. I didn't know if it was right for me. And 2 hours later, I was still searching. And you know, our actual like slogan for our first for the first part of the website was, because finding a class shouldn't be harder than taking one. And that's exactly what that happened in that moment. Is I spent more time looking for the class than the class actually was. And that's when I realized that there was a major opening in the market and a problem to be solved. And from who I was, from everything I just told you, I realized it was the problem I had to solve, because I was so passionate about keeping passion in my life, and I would love to spend my life and my time building a product that's going to do the same for others. And that was sort of the epiphany moment for me of being like, oh, this is an idea I could really go for.
So typically, 2 things. That approach is usually something I wouldn't recommend, where you're just like, I'm going to start a company, best idea before Saturday wins. Like, that's usually not how to do it. But she didn't really like go look. She went looking, but what she found was that she was the customer, and she knew the problem intimately. So yes, you knew what you were doing.
I agree with what you're saying. You have to be intimately passionate about what you're going to do. I mean, till this day, I think as a founder, like, you have to be willing to go to like the grave with your idea. Like, work towards it every single day. You have to know that even if you're building it 10 years later and like you've got like 5 customers, you still care to solve that problem. You can't just sign up to do anything else. And so I knew in that moment it was a problem that like felt like something that I knew I needed to solve for other people.
So you gave yourself 2 weeks. Within that 2 weeks, you found a problem to solve. Why don't you tell us about the first iteration of your company? What was Classivity, and what problem did it solve?
Yep, so the initial idea was, why not build like a seamless web, ZocDoc, open table for classes? And it made sense to a lot of people. It still makes sense to a lot of people. And we launched it, and you know, it was called Classivity at the time, and it was a search engine that let people book photography classes, cooking classes, as well as fitness classes. And we actually built the product for too long, so that was one of our mistakes. We took about 1.5 years to sort of get all the data, build it perfectly, get the homepage right, and we got into this amazing program called Techstars in New York City. There's a lot of incubators out here as well, and there's actually 3 Techstars actually out here. And we were part of one of like the inaugural classes in New York City with David Tisch, and we got into the program, and we decided we would launch at the end of the program. And when we launched, and we had about 1 million classes listed, guess how many bookings we had? In the first 3 years of the company, for the time we had Classivity up, we did 100 bookings total. And like I said, we've done 40 million being ClassPass, so there's obviously a difference in it, but it didn't work. And when I think about those first few months, and I remember it being hard, because we were like, this is wrong, but the burning passion inside of me to get people to go and do something was bigger than any of that. And so while it was, oh my God, this sucks, like, you know, no one's going to class, we just had to figure it out. And we still had capital, so we decided that we would take another chance and try a new model, and that's when we started experimenting. And we built a second product that was called the Passport, which most people still don't know about. But the Passport was a discovery pass where you could go and try fitness classes in your area for 1 month. And we were offering basically the complementary classes that most of these studios offer today, packaged together into one sort of website, one package. And what was great about that product is people started falling in love with discovery. So they would go to a yoga class one day, they would go to a spin class, and then a dance class. And that 1 month became this amazing time in their life. And so many of our customers started emailing us and actually even frauding us and buying the package over again when you explicitly couldn't, because the entire promise we had made to the studios was people would do this and then come and buy your package. But when you start seeing customers wanting to pay for something and you're not accepting their money, that was a really big time for us to go back and think about, hey, what are we doing wrong, or what do they want that we're offering, and how do we get our partners on board? And that was the moment where we decided to become a subscription, which was actually a really, in the scheme of things, like you think about that. And I remember it was a Saturday. Actually, my co-founders weren't that excited about it. They were like, we just pivoted, like we had spent 2 years building this other product, and now we're here and we finally have revenue, because the Passport actually was taking off. It was 100% gross margin. So we finally had profit, we had revenue, and it was growing. But when I knew what this product was, I mean, it was like a glorified discount product that only lasted in someone's life for a month. And I didn't sign up to change someone's life for a month. I wanted to change people's lives ongoing and make sure that they stay connected to their passion. So that was like an important moment, and I had to fight through it. I'm actually like, there's an HBS case on it as well that I teach about that moment at this point, because it was such an important moment in the company. And thankfully enough, everyone was like, fine, like we'll give this a shot. And they built the subscription, and a month later, we had it up, and about, I would say 3 months into having ClassPass and the Passport, the revenue of ClassPass was probably 5x of the Passport, and then it just started going viral at that point. And then finally, 4 months later, we decided that we would shut down Classtivity. The search engine was still up, which was one of those moments for my engineer at that time. I mean, we didn't have to do anything because it was all automatic, but the search engine was still up. We changed our name at that point to ClassPass as well.
So there's a couple things I want to double back on.
Sure.
And then we'll continue with ClassPass. So with Classivity, people weren't using, customers weren't doing it. You went out there, you did a demo day, you tried to raise money. What was the reaction in terms of raising money for Classivity?
So raising money was easy, which was actually, easier. Okay, we can talk about that. It was easier than actually getting the product to work. And I say that from the standpoint of, the idea resonated because there were other platforms. Like I was saying, I had the Open Tables and the ZocTalks and the Seamless Webs to compare it to, and no one had done anything in this space. And with my background, so back to what you were saying, it was great. I had my MIT, I had Bain, I had all the credentials. So in that, it was easier for me to go. And I mean, you obviously get a lot of no's. I'm not gonna make fundraising sound like it's a piece of cake, because it's not. But I actually felt like it was easier for me once we started raising money, once we got into Techstars, to get money, even though I didn't have a product working at that point. But at some point, I needed to make sure that I didn't run out of cash. And there was this important period where I remember I was trying to raise money because I had 3 months of cash left. And we had just put ClassPass out in the market. I had 1 month of data. We were trying to raise money, and the only data I actually had was on the Passport. And I didn't want to raise money on the Passport. No one was going to invest in it. So I did a bridge round at the time. And I thankfully had some of my old investors give me a little bit of money. That got me over the hump. That got us to being able to raise our $2 million seed round. That got us to the future.
And you mentioned that you took a long time to put out a product. I had a digital company, and I did sort of the same thing, where you believe in it so deeply, and you want the first experience to be great and seamless and just blow people away. What advice do you give for speed of getting a product into the customer's hands as quickly as possible?
Sure. So in any customer company, I think it's different if you're doing software or other things, because everyone has different cycles. You just have to create your MVP. And when MVP is your minimal viable product, that tests your hypothesis, right? So we were trying to, what were we trying to do? Get someone to go to class? I could have figured that out in many other ways if I was going to do that without having to build the entire back end, and when I say the back end, meaning building the entire reservation system and all the booking and all the capacity management. That didn't matter. What mattered was if someone would go to class. And one of my favorite things is the first 100,000 reservations we did on ClassPass, we all did manually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because at that point I was like, I'm not building one piece of code until I knew my customers wanted something. And I think what people also have to remember with customers, it is very hard to change people's behavior. It's the hardest thing. it's actually very easy to have like a product idea and put some, and especially now, I mean, you can create a website in 10 seconds. You can create followers on Instagram, great. Like you can actually get eyeballs and you can build a product. What is very hard is to change their behavior, whether it's getting them to use a product they haven't used before, or, I mean, in our case, we were trying to get them to take an hour of their time and go work out, which is even harder to do because so many people are motivating people to try and work out. But you can actually test that behavior change without having to build a lot of technology. You could do it via email, you could do it via, just sort of hacks on the front end now. There are so many tools out there that help you build like mocks of products that you can get customers advice and engagement from. And I mean, now my entire thing is if someone's not booking, like we're not building anything until I know that that's what's going to motivate someone to actually go to class.
And what's great about digital businesses and online businesses is that you can see and monitor this stuff in real time.
Yep.
And anybody who's investing in a company like this is going to look at new signups and recurring and people coming back and how long they're on the how often, frequency of usage, far more than to look at how pretty the logo is and how seamless it is. And I fell victim to this myself. And so I can't stress enough, just like get an MVP in someone's hands and then watch. And then just do A/B tests. You can do these really easy A/B tests of like, does this path work better than this? Is it faster? Does it lead to a click and a purchase? And that's the beauty of online businesses, but I had no idea that you were doing all those manually.
Yeah, we did, and we even did all like the customer service, the reservation management. We had a team in the Philippines helping us at some point because we just outsourced it before we automated all of it. But even I think to the point of the behavioral change, I think at some point what was also so nice was we were doing everything manually, like literally we would build stuff that would track people's behavior. Like I knew how many times someone would make a reservation and like, we're like in 4 minutes they'll probably cancel. Like we would sit there and watch these things because that's how much we could predict these things. But I'm so glad we were doing that in real time because if a robot was doing it and if it was technology, I would have missed the customer psychology. And I actually even at the time was doing all the customer service. My pseudonym was Pam. But it is so important to do customer service because that's how I knew. Like, forget even like the numbers that were telling me and pointing me in the right direction that ClassPass was better than the passport. I started getting emails from people. I mean, I only needed like 5 emails. And I only had 150 customers when I knew ClassPass was going to be huge. 150. People are always like 1,000. I'm like, no, 150 subscribers. And a few of them had written me emails telling me that this product changed their life, that they felt confident, that they felt like, it was basically everything I felt I had in my life because of dance. They had written me in that email, and that's when I was like, I built the product I needed. And after that point, I just knew it was about scaling it.
And so that's sort of the question would be like, when did you know you're on something? When you had 150 people that were just absolute evangelists.
It was their emails. It was their, obviously reservation volume was going on, but it was the consistency in the reservation volume. They weren't churning off the product, but I mean, it was the emails they were writing me and the virality of the product. That's the other thing. Like, you don't want to have to spend dollars on marketing. I mean, I don't think until maybe 2016 did we spend $1 on real like digital marketing. And I say that because when it's a good product, your friends want to genuinely talk about it. And what was so great about our product is people wore it on their like faces. Literally, people would be like, "Why are you so happy?" And someone would be like, "I signed up for this thing, and I'm working out, and it's like I'm having the time of my life." And the cool thing about and to be honest, I never, and I still am like, I don't consider myself a fitness person, even though I work out every day. But like, that's why I built this product for everyone who is scared to walk into a fitness class. I didn't build it for the 1% of people who already knew how to work out. I did not. I'm 4'11". I was totally intimidated to walk into any studio. I didn't know what plank was. I didn't know how to lift a weight. And I was like, let's build a product for everyone who is scared to death about these classes. And that was sort of like always my North Star of like, build it for the person who's completely scared.
We're gonna get to that in a second. That is, can you explain to them what a viral loop is? In
Yeah.
terms of like when you're onto something and you really know that
people recommend it to others.
And how you cannot spend marketing money.
So you want to, I mean, you could do things like referral codes, but what was actually nice for us, you want every customer you have to tell more people than that one customer, right? So you want the denominator in a way to be the person, and then how many people they tell to be more than that one. So then, therefore, you're always growing that viral ratio over time.
It's the holy grail, and it's
Yeah.
it's not easy to do. Where we finally close one person as a user, and you tell 3 other people. We don't have to spend any money on those 3 people. And it's very difficult to do. When you do it, you do see the type of growth that ClassPass has, that
Yep.
social
Uber,
media
all
does.
of them.
Yeah, it just sort of
Absolutely.
takes off.
Yeah.
Tell us the business model for ClassPass. Sort
Yep.
of how do you guys price and how do you make money?
Yep, and it's changed a little bit over time, and I think this has also been an interesting, learning for myself, and like I think you see companies go through these changes as they grow and hit scale. So obviously, the search engine model was based on an affiliate fee, right? So every time someone was supposed to go to class, I was going to make like a 15% margin off of a class. That obviously business model was built upon volume, which I did not have, so obviously that didn't work out. The second model we had, which was the Passport, was a $49 offering, and we were getting the classes at $0 because they were complimentary classes. And our promise to the studios was, we thought people would buy the packages at them and we would take a cut of them. Once again, like great business model for us. It was terrible for our partners, so we had to pivot again. The subscription, the way it works is our customers pay us one fee, and then we pay out every single time a class is attended based upon a negotiated rate we have with the studio. So what was really nice for us, people are always like, how did you start? Like, how did you get the studio owners on board? But for us, we actually were going from, hey, we're not going to pay you $0 anymore, to we're going to pay you $15 when their classes might have been $30. So we negotiated that we would do a 50% discount off of their 10 class pack. Right, so that was already discounted. So we were getting roughly 50 to 60% off of all the classes, and that's the negotiated rate we have. And then we built our model to pay off every single time. The problem with the model is it's built on breakage.
Explain that.
Because every single time someone goes to class, it actually is coming out of our margin.
Okay.
Right? And so it's something that like we're now tweaking, because that was actually, as a founder who is very mission oriented, and I think about this like all the time, because I study these models all from Spotify and Netflix. I mean, that is, to me, I'm always like, the number one thing I care about is reservations. But then our business model was built upon not having reservations.
There's a conflict there.
Yeah, and and it's always really interesting for me, because I'm like, I'd be at my board meetings and I started realizing everyone being like, how do we, not, no one would directly say this, but there was this moment, and we actually, one of the cool things we did that also helped our virality is we made the product unlimited for a while. And it was amazing in terms of viral growth.
Meaning I can go, I sign up,
And
I can
classes
go
unlimited times.
10 times to one place.
There was always a cap on the number
month.
that you could go to any one studio, but you can go to an unlimited number of classes.
Okay.
Now, it was actually, at the time when we made that decision, people on average were going to around 5.5 classes, and they were costing us roughly $10. So our price point was $100. So the gamble we were saying is, okay, if we went to unlimited, would that 5.5 change, and to what amount would it change? And because we were making a huge margin at the time. So we had to figure that out. But once again, this was in real life testing. There was no other way to test this aside from doing it in real life. And so we launched this unlimited program. And then we had this other problem that happened, which was overnight, literally, I feel like it was like about a month, every city in America had a copycat of our product.
Really?
I mean, there wasn't a day I went to work where I didn't get 5 emails with some random names of, and they were copycats of the exact website. I mean, and it was like a local play, right? If you went and signed up your studios in your local area, it was all local marketing. And so this was really hard, because we were like, we can't do anything to shift. We knew we were in a bit of the problem with unlimited, and we were in a little bit of a problem with the breakage model, but we couldn't really do anything about it. And then we went to the markets, and I hired about 60 people in about 40 days, and we launched 29 markets in 15 months. And we actually now we took out all of our competitors.
Did you sweep any of them up in terms of acquire, or did you?
Yeah, we acquired one that was on the West Coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you, when you're growing so quickly, how many people work at ClassPass now?
250.
And how do you feel about how did you, in a fast-moving environment where you're growing that quickly and you're building the business and focusing on the business, how did you install a culture that sort of meant something to you, and how would you describe your culture?
Yeah, I mean, it's a startup culture. You don't really ever put a culture on people. It's who you hire. Your team makes up the culture. We were all just so hungry to get this product. We knew it was everyone who worked there was obsessed with the product. So many of our employees were avid ClassPassers. And I think that to me was like a core part of what made it so exciting, and they just wanted to bring it to more and more people. And our pillars early on were growth, passion, and efficiency. So those were like the three things that like we had as like values and pillars in the company. I think as a leader, you have to lead in the right way. People follow your lead. And one of the things with the competitors, like I never focused on competition, and till this day, I don't. There was a moment where I was like, all right, we need to like take care of this so we can all move forward. And I think like as a leader, you just have to be able to make those calls. And when you have the right team, everyone is, when you say jump, they're like, I'm jumping behind you. And that was the culture we had. I mean, we would be like, all right, we were going, one of my favorite stories, we called it Operation 2015. It was October of 2014. We were launching a city about a month. That was sort of like our cadence at the time. And this is when all those competitors came out. And so it's October and we're sitting down and I'm like, I can't stand that. Like all these people are copying our model. And we didn't want to get into like a competition war. We were trying to change the world for the better. You can't have competition out there. You just kind of want to be able to do what you want to do versus sit there and worry about trying to take each other down. But we ended up at that point, I remember being like, okay, this is our product. We can't lose it. And instead of doing 8 cities by 2015, we called it Operation 2015, which meant 20 cities by Jan 1 of 2015. And that was 2 months away.
No kidding.
And we did it.
So,
and the whole team would, this was sort of like, and this is how things would operate at the time. It'd be like a conversation I was having with like 2 of my like strategic confidants on like in the evening. And we'd walk into the morning and be like, this is what we're doing. And the team would be like, great. And then like start making calls.
It sounds like everybody sort of was on board, hired good people.
Hired great, yeah.
And are sort of centralized decision making? Was it you only, or did you sort of have a team that you
I
guys?
always had a team. I mean, you need to always have like people around you. I think as a leader, there always has to be one decision maker. I completely believe in that model. That being said, I think it's important for me, like it's important. I had never done this before, right? So, I mean, as confident as I could be in terms of being like, I know I need to get this out there, I definitely had other people and advisors around me that could guide me through all those decisions.
Yeah, who have done it before, and it's nice
Absolutely.
So you had a board?
I had a board. I had a board of 2 people at the time. It was a really small board. Yeah.
Even with raising money?
Yeah. Yeah. When you're in a good place, you get friendly terms.
Yeah, usually when people give you money, they want a board seat to try and.
Fritz was actually on my board. So Fritz, who is actually now the CEO of ClassPass, he was the first person I put on my board. And so he was like my co-founder. Yeah, and so it was like the 2 of us.
Yeah, that's a unique situation. If you've raised any outside money, that's usually the condition of giving you money. There's preferences or all these other things we'll talk about, but usually it's like we want to be on the board, and sometimes they'll want to control your board depending on how much money. And so it also depends on when you raise money. If you've got momentum like she had, and you're raising money, you've got way more leverage, right, than if you're still trying to prove that the concept works. That's really interesting to hear that. And so, through the iterations and, that the first product didn't work, the second one worked but didn't really make money. What advice would you give them in terms of, iterating, sticking with it, failure? I mean, how did you view that? Because a lot of people would be very defeated if their first product that they dreamed of doesn't work.
Yeah, I wasn't ever product obsessed. I was mission obsessed, and I think back to that, and I think that to me is so important. It's not about the colors or the logo or what your homepage looks like, or even how like the product necessarily works. You have to be willing to be obsessed with the problem you're solving, and success is only like solving the problem, and it's not failure if you don't. But you have to think about all these roadblocks and constraints that you might come across as data points. So every time I would go towards something and it didn't work, I was just like, okay, like let's find the other door to go through and let's learn what we can by the fact that we couldn't go down this path. To me, like failure is a data point. It's telling you which direction to not go, and it's also giving you a lot of insight along the way that you're getting there of stuff you can use to actually get to the right decision. But you have to be willing to listen to it, and you can't take it personally. Actually, one of the other big things is we had a lot of press when we launched Classtivity because we were in Techstars, and we were in this is what's crazy. We were on the cover of Inc. magazine 4 years ago for Classtivity. Okay, because we got into Techstars.
Now.
4 years ago. We didn't even have a customer. And it was part of like the Techstars. We had a ton of press. And when we were pivoting in that year and a half, like literally we went into stealth. Like we went and hid, right? Because I was like, people were like, oh, like, don't you want press? And I'm like, no, press doesn't mean anything. What matters, the only thing that matters is customers. Even till this day when people are like, oh yeah, like I want all this press for my launch. I'm like, your launch, I mean, yes, it kind of matters, but it doesn't really. Like, hopefully you know what your MVP is way before that, and you're using launch as like some sort of engagement, like activation moment, but you need to launch to your customers every single day. A new customer is a new person who is going to come to your site and experience it for the first time, and you have to build your product to have that magic with every single customer.
It's such great advice. I mean, I've not followed this sometimes, and so I've learned the hard way as well. But failure as a data point is a great thing to say, to not take it personally, because so much, her identity is wrapped up in this business, her passion, her love of dance and connecting people and solving this problem. So instead of being defeated with the first iteration, she's taken some money now. I mean, she's got visibility. And how do you not personalize that?
Yeah. Failure is only running out of money. Like, someone told me that. They're like, as long as you have cash, you've got ways to go. And I'm like, I have cash, so I am fine, right? The worst thing you can do is stabilize and run out of cash and like get into a comfort zone. That to me would be the only doomsday, is me not taking everything I could do before I would run out of cash.
So think about that as you define what success means to you, what failure means to you. And it's really important that you don't personalize it, that failure of a product or a business or an idea doesn't become, I am a failure, I'm not, this was a data point. And to be able to pivot so quickly off it and find another avenue for this business, it's really a great lesson for you. We're going to ask a couple more questions, and the students, you have a mic for the students to ask questions? All right, we're going to let you guys ask questions to Payal. This class is about mindset and ultimately about sort of personal philosophy. And I wanted to touch upon, do you have a personal philosophy? Not just business, but sort of your philosophy, maybe that's built into the business?
I think it's really important to have a purpose that's big and that you can dream about. And I think it's also really important to adapt to change. I think, like, my dad always said that, the only thing constant is change. So you have to learn to be adaptable in every situation. And I think I just don't like getting stuck. Like, I can't, in any situation in my life, like, I can't stay there for very long, because I just am like, what's next? And taking leaps. But that being said, I'm not going like this. Like, I actually know what my true north is and where I'm trying to go in like every direction. It's just more of like, how am I getting there? And if I start feeling like something's making me like feel flat, it's just about ripping it apart and taking the leap to do it.
Great advice. And your role has changed. You alluded to that. Before we give it to them, tell us how your role has changed from CEO, you're still the founder obviously, to executive chairman.
Yep.
And what was that like to give up the CEO role, and what's your role now?
Yeah, so, as I was just talking about, like, as a founder, you're obsessed with your product. And that, I was just telling you about these first 4 or 5 years of the company. And then it became about other things, which are really great problems to solve. They're just different problems to solve, like solving hiring and solving like meetings and process. And they're just different types of problems that you have to solve as you grow a company of scale. And I was always obsessed with my product. And that was sort of like, that was one big thing that I started feeling as like the company probably got to like 150 people. I just felt like I probably spent like 2 hours on my product a week. And I was like, this is like not how I want to be spending my time. But at the same time, like, obviously I had built a massive company. I needed to make sure it was moving in the right direction. Someone was making all the decisions. And so that was one part of it. And the second thing is, I don't fit into a box. Like, I just don't like feeling like, I don't know, I just never have done anything in my life to have a title, to feel constant, or to feel stagnated. And I started just feeling like, I just felt like I wasn't growing and like in the person I wanted to become anymore. And so my whole thing is, okay, how do you get out of this situation? And so one of the most important things, though, at that time was finding someone, right? And what was so great for me is Fritz, who I just mentioned was my first board member. He's like my co-founder, and he's really been like the person next to me through this whole journey. And we were talking, and I'm like, what if we were able to like switch roles? Because then I could focus more on like product and a little bit more of something that I'll tell you guys about in a little bit. And I knew I wanted to do innovation and product stuff and not focus on just being like, obviously like still doing all the brand and product stuff, but not focusing more on like the day-to-day operations. And so in April we switched titles officially, but it's just been like, he's just my partner. So like, it doesn't matter. It's just, we call each other like mom and dad. So we're like a good yin and a yang to the company. But I think what's also important is I wanted to make sure the company had one decision maker. And so that was an important thing. And like, I had to also obviously trust that in him, because I think it gets really confusing when there's two people in charge. And that to me is everything I have learned from every other company I've seen. And so I did give him those reins, but it's actually, it's unleashed me to do more and more in my life.
It's so interesting to hear you say that. And the wisdom of checking yourself. She's got the successful company, it's booming by all outward indications. You continue to grow it and stay the CEO, but she kept on saying, like, am I growing? Like, what are her metrics for success? Am I growing? Am I learning? Am I finding a new challenge? Am I solving a problem? Or am I spending time, with someone saying, I need a raise?
Right.
Some of the things
absolutely.
that aren't
different problems.
Aren't as fun when you own a company, not as glamorous, and you got to figure out what you do well and what makes you sort of soar.
Absolutely.
And what's the highest and best use of your time and talents. And so to continually ask yourself those things is just something that very few entrepreneurs do, particularly when it's moving quickly.
Absolutely.
And you've got other people's money, and they're, of course, she's the founder, she's the CEO, look what she's done.
Yeah.
They'll expect you to stay there. So I really applaud you for making the change.
Yep.
Good for you. All right, questions for Payal. You got a mic?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. My only question is, how critical is it to the success of the company to have an in-house developer versus an outsourced person?
Oh, great question. And I think it does differ on the product. So if you're manufacturing a product and making it by scratch, and you can like link into stuff like Shopify and like other products, I think it's fine, right? Because the actual success of your product isn't necessarily dependent on the technology. It depends on how important technology is to your product. And for us, it was, so we needed someone in-house. But I honestly think it depends on every company. And like I said, if it's like a physical product, I don't think you need one. And I think you can outsource it. But obviously, like as your company grows, you do need someone that you can trust, because you do want to customize things, and everyone's product is a little bit different. You want to create a unique experience for each person.
Yeah, because like most of the successful companies such as Tinder, Uber, I believe they all started with an in-house person.
Right, and those are obviously technology-backed companies. They're not physical products. So absolutely, I don't think you can't really build a marketplace without technology.
Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. You spoke a little bit about how being unlimited helped you go viral, and I was just wondering what your thoughts are on the subscription model in general, like with MoviePass and how it's $9.95 right now to go to unlimited movies, and if you think that's sustainable or if they're going to have problems down the line.
Yeah, I remember reading that. So I think subscription is a wonderful model to help consumers think about and doing aspirational things, right? So things that you don't know how to budget for, right? Things that you feel like you won't do a la carte. For example, when I always talk about Classtivity not working, it didn't work because having to go to a workout class that you were scared to go to and have to pay $32 for it all in the same moment is actually a lot of brain cycles that most people can't get through. So I think what's nice about subscription is it separates payment from actually like doing something or getting something. So I think it's actually a phenomenal model. I think you have to make sure any subscription model is large enough that it has a demographic and access to enough of a large variety of things that is going to be customer friendly, right? So if it's only like one type of product, I think you end up having a much smaller demographic that's going to buy it than a wide one. I think with any subscription, you need to understand your cost basis at the end of the day. Like without knowing how much movies are going to cost, and not just in terms of the dollars that they're going to pay the theaters, it's actually about the theaters and how much it costs for that person to actually walk in. And that was something we had to spend a lot of time on, is what is actually like rock bottom that we could actually pay our studios to make sure that they're going to survive, but not just be discounting their product. And it took us a little bit to come up with that number and have enough volume. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that model as it goes.
When it comes to making big decisions, do you think you depend more on data or your gut? That's
a great question. Early early on, I feel like it's now that the company's bigger, like we definitely have to look at data. But earlier on, I would say like 100% my gut. I mean, you kind of have to, but like once again, data comes in different forms, right? So you can get data from like actually looking at numbers, but to me, like doing qualitative research is just as important. And that's actually what usually shaped my gut more than anything. Like I said, you don't need thousands of customers to figure something out. Like sometimes it's what do 5 people think, and get a gut check from them.
Hi, thank you so much for coming today. My name is Lauren Bickford, and I have a few questions about you as a female founder.
Sure.
So did you face any challenges as a female founder in technology, and what advice would you give to female founders? Great
questions. So, when I think about like becoming a female entrepreneur, I know this is like odd to say, but like I never walked into the room feeling like I was any different. To be honest, my height was something that I always was more worried about than anything else. And I say that because I think it's important to just like, you have to believe in yourself, right? And so that sort of answers your second question. Like, I just was like, I am not gonna let anything stand in my way in building this product. Like, I'm just not gonna entertain it, right? And I think that's an important motto to have. And if you have that motto, you end up like, the room ends up understanding that. That being said, I was building a product for females mostly, right? I mean, we are now, I would say like 80-20 at this point, but in the beginning, I mean, most of the rooms I walked into were mostly male. And many of them would be like, why don't you build a personal training app? Or, and I was like, but no, that's not what I want to do. And so that actually took a little bit of time. And I will say something that actually was really nice is a lot of like their wives started using it, or other people in the company started using it. And that's when they were like, what's this product that my wife is like obsessed with, or, other things like that. That being said, that's not the way it should go. Like what we need is to obviously have more female investors there so we don't have to run into these problems. But what we need is more female entrepreneurs to exit their companies and to succeed, right? And I look at actually like some of my colleagues, and I feel like there's about 10 of us that probably have companies between 100 to maybe a billion plus. Katrina Lake, who just IPO'd Stitch Fix. And I think what's so amazing is, for me, I'm like, oh my God, like we're gonna be the first founders that are gonna have companies even in that range. And I think as hard as it is, because the numbers aren't great right now, at least we have a chance, because I didn't have anyone to look at when I started. And we just need more money flowing from females that are, big dollars of exits. And I think it'll flow back into female entrepreneurs going forward.
Great. How's it going? As your company has grown, how have you balanced kind of the change going on within your company while also staying true to like your original customer base?
Oh, that's a great question. Look, I think at the end of the day, your like true north as a company is your product, and the value proposition of ClassPass has not changed, right? It's still this flexible membership, it's value oriented, it's about discovery, and the actual product still has the same exact heartbeat. Obviously, we've had to change a few things from prices and we actually haven't changed anything else in terms of the customer experience. We've probably changed more for our partners. But I think it's really important to make sure your value proposition and like the promise you made to your customers doesn't change. And I mean, sometimes you do have to make changes, and we've had to, and I think you just have to be really honest when you make those changes about why you're making them.
Hi, thank you for coming. What was I going to say? Oh, do you think it's important to go out in the business world before starting your own business? Like going out in the workforce before doing your own thing?
Yeah, I think we were talking about this a little bit. I think it's important to understand how the world works. Just how other people make decisions, how corporations work a little bit, how sometimes if they can be slow, like how to find the person you need to talk to in an organization. And to be honest, like different jobs in your life can prepare you for that. So if you've had jobs like growing up, I think people have been around managers and how they think. Because sometimes what I've learned is sometimes you're calling someone you want to work with them, you might just be talking to the wrong person, or that person has different incentives or is trying to get a promotion at work, and you just have to know how to manage the situation. And I wouldn't have learned that if I didn't work in the real world before I started my own company.
Hi, thank you for coming. My name is Laura, and I have a question to you about branding. Can you talk about branding and obstacles you faced across all three of your iterations?
Yeah. So, in hindsight, branding doesn't matter at all. And I say that in a way that is, it actually, my product mattered more than my name, more than my logo, more than the colors of my website. And they've actually gone through many changes. Like, we just probably went to this about 3 months ago, And I say that once again because when people think about ClassPass, they think about our product and they think about their lives and how much, the classes that they're going to. They're not necessarily thinking about our logo and colors because we're not like a fashion beauty brand. You know what I mean? I think it's different if you're in a realm that definitely is glorifying those things, but like in our world, it's not. So it totally depends on your industry and like what it values and what gives you credibility. That being said, I will say design is a really important thing. So something that I think is really important is like UX design and how you actually design your interface. It's actually an amazing new field that I think is just so brilliant, and I think more people need to study it. But it sort of reminds me of, I feel like 7 years ago I did a case around like how grocery stores were set up and like how they put shelving. And in a way, that's how like apps are now. It's like you have to really think about what you're showing to a customer and where. And people really study that. And I think that is actually a really important thing to nail in your product, because that at the end of the day is going to be, the interaction and the relationship you have with your customers.
Hi, my name is Haley, and I have a question regarding hiring your team.
Yep.
You talked about how important it is for them to have your back and be just as passionate about the mission. So what metrics did you look for, or how did you make those decisions?
Early on, it was purely about just, like, do we get along? Can we get stuff done together? And the can we get stuff done together thing is a really important thing, because you can't be a team that doesn't know how to make decisions. You'll never get anywhere. You could put the smartest people in the room, but if they can't make decisions together, you're going nowhere. So a lot of it for me was, can we work together and move forward together? And if we could, all have great ideas, but we were just kind of like saying ideas together, it was never going to go anywhere. And then trust. I mean, especially in the beginning, you just need to, and I actually have an announcement to make, which I'll make to all of you guys, which you guys can get in on in a second, on something really special that we're launching here in LA. But you want a team that's like, my team is like, if I message them at 2 a.m, like someone's gonna reply to me, and it's that sort of feeling and that sort of hustle of like, I care about this, and no one's caring about like, oh, my job, and I'm not here because of pride and ego. Like, people are genuinely there because they're like, we have to get this product working. And if you don't have people like that, they won't last, not through a startup. Like, we were just talking about all the problems you go through, all the challenges you go through, and that takes a lot of, just self-discipline. It takes a lot of passion. It takes a lot of, okay, like, we're gonna try this again, and you just need to have people who are going to get through it with you.
Hi, thank you for coming. My name's Natalie. My question was, when you started Classtivity, how did you create a team to create that product? Like, how did you convince people to drop everything they were doing and believe in what your idea was?
So, someone once told me this, and I think it's very true, is that is the number one job of a founder. It's to be able to, you sell your product, but your number one thing is you have to be able to sell people and be able to get them to join, right? And I guess I didn't know, like, in the beginning, it wasn't about like convincing people with money. I mean, we didn't have any money to give people, but it was passion. And it was like, come on this journey with me, and them, believing enough in the vision, in me, to take them, and be a part of this journey and work together every day. And that comes from, like, honestly, it's pure who you are, and like your pure passion that's going to be that trigger that's going to get them there. Like, look, at the end of the day, like, everyone can kind of, look at like salary and, equity, and that's all, let's pretend those are all equal. What actually sets it apart is going to be the founder.
Thank you.
I kind of want to ask you about the competition aspect that you mentioned. You were able to beat your competition because you were larger, you had more money, so you were able to go and acquire more studios. But if you were the smaller company in that scenario, how would you have beat out your competitors?
Hustle, pure hustle. Like, and we had one company, the one we ended up acquiring. I mean, you have to be able to raise money. Like, money was definitely an important part. If you can't raise money, I think it does become difficult. But it was just, can you get people to go and sell these studios? Money was a big part of it, like I said, but it was pure hustle at that point.
I like when she talked about competition, where she just sort of smiled and says, we have to take care of that.
Yeah, I know. You know, I always say this, like, I'm like small, and people always are like, oh, you're so nice. I'm like, yeah, wait till you were. No, I'm kidding. You know, I'm like, but in moments like that, I'm like, but once again, like, it came down to mission. It was like, you know, in that moment, I was like, how do I protect my mission? That was like the only thing on my mind. And I was like, if this, like, everything, we're all going to take each other out of the market in 5 months if we keep doing what we're doing, so. It's okay. See, you got to be fierce as a female. It's really important.
Hi, I'm Samika, and I know you're very passionate about your product, and I think it's very easy when you talk to people like one-on-one and you convey your passion. But how does your product convey your passion to other people? Like, just saying, like, how many classes do you want per month? How do I see your passion behind it?
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't do a good job.
I know.
If you went to our About page and our community page, I think you'll see it. You'll see it a lot more in there. You can go to our community page. I mean, it's, you know, once again, like, it has to, like, your brand comes out in different forms. And I think one of the coolest things about ClassPass is, you know, and I think this was always hard, and I think this is actually one of the hardest things with subscriptions, is people usually in the beginning are like, I don't think I need this. It's just how every subscription sort of works. And you get people on through a trial, and they fall in love with the experience. And to me, like, 95% of the product experience of ClassPass happens in real life. It does not even happen while people are opening our app. I don't even want you to spend time on the app. What I want you to do is spend time in class, right? And so to me, that is our brand, and that is the experience we're giving people. And the number one thing that we have to do is get you to go. Because if you don't go to class, there's no way I'm going to be able to send that message to you.
So because you're relying so much on those classes, how do you ensure the quality of the classes with such a wide array of cities?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we had a rating and review on every class from the beginning. So very similar to like how Uber works, like you couldn't book your next class until you reviewed the last class. So we had that data from the beginning, but also early on, I mean, like me and my co-founders did every class, and there was like a day, I think I went to 4 classes back to back. This is also how we signed up the studios in the beginning, because we would go to class and we actually wanted to experience them before we would go and talk to them and even try and get them to sign up. But I think in the beginning as a founder, you have to do a lot of it, right? Because you can't sell something that's like a ripoff or, you know, that's not real. And you have to really believe in your product experience. And for us, that was the inventory. So we had to make sure it was good. And then now we have checks and balances through the ratings and reviews.
So as society like began to like trend towards eating healthy and like exercising, like how much of a role do you think timing played in ClassPass launching?
A great question. Yeah, we definitely got to ride the rise of studio boutique fitness, and that was definitely something that you know. Sometimes I'm like, did we help it? You know, did they like which one was actually happening first? I think what was amazing is when we started. We saw that the growth rate of the number of studios opening, like at the time, like SoulCycle was pretty big, but there weren't many other studios that were that big at the time. There was probably like the Barrys of the world. And we definitely were a part of that rise in studio fitness and like the wellness trend that definitely helped. And I think as you guys think of markets to go and tackle, you have to be thinking about what's going on in the world, right? It's almost like, if you think about like Instagram or Facebook or all these other products, like you have to know where people are going, right? So what's going on right now, like people's eyes are on experiences and they're on doing things that aren't physical anymore, right? So it's when you start thinking about that, you should think about like where are people spending their times. One of my favorite trends that actually happened with us is when I was first starting the company, all the like online retailers were going from offline to online, right? So you started seeing like the Bonobos of the world, the Warby Parkers of the world only have online presence. And now they all have retail stores. And so, you know, the world also keeps changing, and I think you have to study like the market cycles of how behavior changes and how trends change, because now everyone wants to go and have a physical space again. So it's actually really interesting, but you have to kind of know, are things going down or up, and be able to ride that wave.
Hi. So what would you say your biggest obstacle was, and how did you overcome that?
Biggest obstacle was definitely getting to product market fit. And when I say product market fit, that means having a product that, you know, people want and that I felt like I could really scale and build into multiple cities. And the only way you could do that is by iterating over and over again with your customers. Because until we hit product market fit, we wouldn't be anything.
No, but it doesn't get picked up on the recording.
Where are we at?
Right here. Second row.
Hi. How did your So You Think You Could Dance audition go?
Well, clearly I'm here, so no, I'm kidding. I mean, I did Indian classical dance at it. It was honestly just a cool experience. Like, I don't know, I'm all about putting yourself in like uncomfortable situations, and it was just really cool. And one of my favorite things about that is I was actually on my way to work, and the auditions were outside of my apartment. Like literally, I saw the line, and I was like walking to work, and I just was like, I like need to be a part of this line. Like it was more of like this experience in my life. Like I actually didn't think I was gonna go anywhere, but I just was like, I just have to be around these people right now and be in this moment, and that's what I did.
Thank you.
Cool. I want to tell them about. Yes.
So when you were pivoting from Passport to ClassPass,
Yep.
you said you had like only 3 months of cash flow left, right? So did you ever think that the product wasn't going to make it through? And did you ever think that you would give up on your mission, or did you think you would make a new idea?
So what was great, and like once again, this is why I always say you need to keep iterating, is if I had stayed with the Passport and did not build the subscription model, even like within a month of a difference, I would have run out of capital. And so what was so important was that we kept iterating. So when I was at that moment where I knew I was running out of cash, I actually had a product working. Like that was like the inception of ClassPass at the time, because we had just tested the subscription. So I actually could go to like some investors and being like, please just give me like a little bit of money to get through this phase, because I knew I actually had a product where no investor is going to give you money on something that doesn't work. And my first product wasn't working, and the second one wasn't either. So I couldn't really raise money. We actually tried to raise money on it, and it didn't work.
All right, you have great questions, by the way. Really, really good discussion. Let's talk about what's next, and then I want to do something with the students. So you've moved from the daily CEO position to a daily executive chairman. So what is the new thing and the next thing that you're tackling?
Yeah, so one of the coolest things that, I wrote this out about 4 years ago for the company, is that we would move from being ClassPass to what we consider ActivePass. So ActivePass is being broader than Studio Boutique Fitness. And then one day we would, sorry, my voice is going. One day we would move from being ActivePass to LifePass. And the way I think about that is very similar to, remember when Amazon was just in books? And Amazon has nothing to do with the book, right? At the end of the day, what Amazon is great at is it got you to buy, it did all the logistics, and the actual product ended up on your door. It didn't matter if it was a book, if it was a doormat, a pottery, like it just didn't matter what it was. And to me, that is the same thing that ClassPass stands for. What we do is we motivate you to say yes to something, you get to go to it, and we make sure that your ticket or whatever your reservation is there at the desk when you get there. And the true north for me, obviously, as I've talked about, has been, for me it was dancing, but passions to me are obviously endless. And while we started in boutique fitness, the original part of the company actually had creative classes on there and fitness classes on there. And so you guys are the first ones actually that we launched our waitlist page yesterday. So if you guys all want to get out your phones, I will tell you that you can sign up and be one of the first beta testers of a new product I'm launching. So once again, we'll probably be making the reservations manually, just like I told you. So please bear with us. But it's called mylifepass.com. And it's a pass to experiences in your local city. So everything from comedy shows and creative classes. Oh, yeah, you can put it up there. To creative classes like sushi making and Malibu wines, and being able to do local experiences in your area. And we're gonna have 2 packages to launch. And now that you guys have all heard my spiel, I would love for you guys, we're gonna probably launch and get the first beta testers out on Tuesday. If you guys sign up with your USC address, I'll make sure you guys are the first to get off the list. And I would love for you guys to sign up, and please give me feedback and tell me if it's not the right product, like I was just telling you, just tell me if it's not. And if you think I should make any changes to it, I'd love to hear it so we can hopefully get this right.
That's fantastic. That's a great call.
Thank you.
That's so good. So let's give her 270 signups. Everyone try and do it.
I promised my team that too.
Remember, like, we're part of helping to start this and give her feedback, and she's done so much for us and been generous for us.
Thanks.
Let's think about this. There's so many things that I learned tonight and reinforced, and it just really felt right to hear again. I want to hear from you guys before we leave. 5 years from now, what piece of advice or wisdom or story or lesson from Payal are you going to learn and take with you? I'm going to record this for you, so I'm going to put this on video, and they're going to be quick. So I want to see, what do you remember in 5 years? Hands up, please. Hands up. Okay, ready? Go.
Make passion your priority.
Failure is a data point. Failure is only running out of money.
It shouldn't take you 2 hours to find Indian dance classes.
It's okay to be the first person to do something.
Hardest thing is changing people's behavior.
Ask yourself if you're happy because no one else will.
Don't do anything just for a title.
If it doesn't exist, build it.
That was mine.
It's not about the press, it's all about the customer.
Coming up here. Go ahead, speak up.
Listen to your data, it's important.
Good products market themselves.
Up top.
The only constant is change.
Follow your passion.
Follow your passion.
Be people focused, not product focused.
Be mission oriented.
Mission oriented. Speak up.
When it doesn't exist, you build it. Set your own metrics for success.
Intimate passion with your product.
All right, swinging around. Watch the hustle.
This is very sweet.
Go ahead.
Passion reigns supreme.
Find a way to dance.
Adaptability.
Adaptability.
Create your own story.
Be mission obsessed and not product obsessed.
Find your true north and do whatever you can to get there. As a leader, you need to lead in the right way.
Be fierce as a female.
Have a purpose.
Have a what?
A purpose.
Purpose?
7 years. Keep iterating.
Launch to customers every day.
Failure is the data point.
One decision maker.
Wow. Last one, last one.
The #1 role of a founder is to sell people.
Let's hear it for Payal Kadakia.
Oh my God, that's so sweet. Thank you.
So good.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
That is so good. So awesome.